back to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. My name is Victoria Dickerson, and I'm joined by hosts Jeff Amerine and Grace Gill. How are you guys?
Glad to be here. Happy Friday.
Yeah.
Doing well.
Good.
Thank you.
Today we're joined by Jonathan Sasse. He's the Chief Strategy Officer at Metova, which is a strategic technology agency that builds products, services, and custom experiences for global brands. Jonathan, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show. So kind of how we kick these off is we just ask about your genesis, your story, where you came from. You just moved to the area. Talk a little bit about that.
It's your Wolverine origin story.
Yeah, the origin story. Right. Yeah, so we don't start with the sequel. I've had a really interesting journey. When I came right out of college essentially right into a tech startup with just a quick stop at a company called Diamond Multimedia. And the interesting thing was, this was right when digital music was just starting to get in its infancy. So like in its piracy phase, right, with Napster and such in college. So I kind of came right out of college and had the opportunity of maybe being a digital pirate and then trying to capitalize on that by making MP3 players. And so we spun off a company called Rio, which was the first company to make digital music players. This was like late 90s. So it's, 25 years ago. But then I went into another digital music startup called iRiver, where we continued to make digital music players. Left there and started a company with some other folks called Slacker Radio, which was a competitor to, Spotify and Pandora. It's like pre-Spotify, but right about the same time as Pandora.
I was a big Slacker Radio.
Yeah, that was us.
Yeah.
And still doing well. A company got acquired by another company that's now Live One, but still powers all the music experience for Teslas and things. So if you've ever been to Tesla and listened to the interactive music, that was us. We built that. And then from there, I worked with some folks out here that a lot of people know, with Jeff Stallnicker, Josh Smith, and Charles Morgan, to really kind of help get Privacy Star pointed in the right direction, and then kind of branded back to First Orion, which is also doing quite well in North Little Rock now. But that was 10 years ago for me, and I've been doing a lot in the state of Arkansas since then. So I commuted out here every other week for almost 2 years to Conway, from San Diego. So I got a good exposure to Arkansas and all the good people here. And then joined Metova, me and myself, Josh Smith, who's the CEO of Metova. We've been business partners for a long time. Kind of a long story there, but the short of it is that, we acquired the software company Metova, who we had previously both been clients of at different companies. And then we just moved the company to Bentonville, at the Ledger building downtown in Bentonville. And then I just moved my family here last month to help kind of get things going. So that's 25 years in a nutshell, I guess.
That was good. I mean, it almost qualified for elevator pitch quality there. You covered it. That was fantastic. So what's next? Give us a little bit on and first of all, welcome to NWA as a full-time resident. Good on you. We're glad you're here. But talk about what comes next for you and Metova.
Yeah, it's an interesting opportunity for us. So, we build custom software. So we're building mobile applications, web applications, cloud installations and architecture. So it's a lot of just trying to find people who are generally at a crossroads with their organization. Usually there's a time to pivot for technology. They maybe are not exactly sure what to do. Maybe don't exactly have all the DNA in their company to even pull that off. And so, where we're pretty different from an agency perspective is it's really turnkey. So like you mentioned, I'm the strategy officer for, professional services group that does custom software. And what that usually means is, I'm going in very early with company stakeholders and trying to build a vision for the future. So like, okay, what kind of customer challenges do you have now? Like, what industry pressures do you have? What technology are you considering? What do you already have? Where are you trying to go? And so trying to start building those roadmaps out, define those products, but then also have the team to go build it. So it's, and everybody's, internal Metova folks, we're all on Central Time with very few exceptions. And so it's really important for us to be able to help those companies, make a good decision and then be able to actually execute that plan. And that's where, our team comes in, and we just kind of keep layering in folks until we can build those products for them. So we're looking at all kinds of things, as you can imagine. We're all in the AI frenzy right now, as I'm sure everybody has played with at least some of the chatbots and other, AI tools. A year or two ago, it was, crypto, blockchain, and NFTs. And so sometimes it's up to us to try and figure out which of these technologies are kind of ready for prime time, are appropriate tech solutions for people that are trying to make some of these decisions, and then giving them sustainable ways to build product and grow their business so that they're not stuck while somebody might leapfrog them or something. So a lot of the work that we're doing out here right now is we're working with companies that are either, wholly based, here in Northwest Arkansas, or they have divisions of their organizations are here, or they might even be connected to companies. So they might also be an agency of some sort, but they don't do what we do. So that's the value of us being up here for sure. Is there's a lot of companies who need this kind of assistance right now, and it's really our expertise. But of course, we still service clients all over the country too.
You mentioned AI, AI/ML, generative AI, and all that's going on in that area. And for a bunch of years, kind of before there was a bunch of national coverage around OpenAI and ChatGPT and DALL-E and all that stuff, people thought, we're just going to rebrand this to automation. It's no big deal. It's kind of becoming infrastructure. And now it's back kind of in the buzzword land again, and the awareness is widespread. As a software development agency, how do you think about that in terms of incorporating what exists and what do you build custom, and what's the impact going to be for agencies in general?
Yeah, it's a little tricky because, as you mentioned, it's once something gets kind of buzzy, we all have a different view of what it is, right?
Yep.
Like everybody thinks something different from what AI is.
Yep.
AI could be an artificial chat tool, or it could be something that's a closed loop data feedback center. So, a lot of times we're trying to do is, it's not uncommon when we meet with stakeholders of an organization and they're like, we need to incorporate, pick your buzzword here into our plan because someone on the board said it or they read it
we
somewhere.
Gotta have this.
Yeah, we have to have AI. We're like, okay, what do you need AI to do? And they're like, I don't know. So same with blockchain. I can't tell you how many times a few years ago, everybody thought they needed blockchain, but they didn't know what they needed it for. So, I think AI is an interesting one. I think, depending on how you use it, it can be a really interesting tool today to get more insight about something. Mm-hmm. I think the part that we're all confronted with right now is that there's no level of goodness rated on an AI response. You just get an AI response.
Right.
And if you're not used to it, that AI response seems pretty positive of itself. Like, this is just facts, right?
It's confident, even if it's total bullshit. That's right. It's really confident.
Yeah, I heard somebody mention the other day that AI tools are great at being confidently wrong. And it reminded me of like my 5-year-old, right? Who's also will spit out facts that he has no idea if they're true or not. So, I think part of that is being cautious about how you're using it. Some people are kind of just jumping right in and being like, write me a marketing plan. And then they just start executing that marketing plan. And like, it's a step right forward. So some of it's just trying to make sure we understand, okay, what are you hoping to get out of this? And like, why might you think you need AI? And then there's other times where we might bring AI to the table, right? Where you say, this is a perfect opportunity to introduce AI into this product. And it could be, this combination of maybe machine learning and AI where the system's built to get feedback and continue to get better on that, but also to kind of observe the communications between it could be an HR professional and, an employee candidate or something. And you start to see like, well, when is it that they turn these people down and when is it that they actually accept this? Or, restaurant orders, or pick your thing where you could be like, we could do this a lot smarter and make it a lot easier. So most of the time we try and come back to saying, really looking at things through the customer lens. So like, what do your customers want from you?
Sure.
Like, what are they hiring you for in the first place?
What are you really trying to do?
Yeah, and what's frustrating them? And if AI can help make that better, great. But we also have to be careful for like technology for the sake of technology, because it will happen. Everybody like, here's all the things I need, and it's the 5 buzziest technology things that there are. Right.
A little bit of innovation theater, right? Hey, we're being innovative. We've got all these buzzwords, and we're running a project. Then who the hell knows if it meets any kind of customer requirement?
Sure. Or like we wrote an algorithm one time, and now we're an AI expert. So it varies. Yeah.
What do you think the solution is to finding the validity of the answers that the AI puts out? Like, what in your perfect world, how would you tell that this is a good answer versus a bad answer?
I think some of it would be the same way we would do as if you were writing a document on that, right? There's sources that are cited. There's like, where did this come from? Based on the information you have, did you have enough data to rate that goodness maybe? So like, did I get this from one source or did I get it from 100 sources? There's a bunch of things. And then did those sources have a certain amount of credibility? There's ways that we can assess that so that at least you would know if you're looking at it like, here's my answer, but I only looked at one source and this is what it was. And then you could go look at that too and be like, how valid is this?
That's good.
So I think a lot of it is just, some of it's coaching and training of just take what you got and do a little more research to make sure that it makes sense. And I think, maybe we've all had the experience where you interact with, like a chat GPT or something, and you ask it something that you definitely know the answer to, and it comes back with something that's not exactly right. And then you respond back like, well, that's not right because of this. And it's like, that's correct because here's the thing that really is the answer. And then you're like, nope, that's not it either. And if you keep going with Bard and some of these others, they'll finally be like, look, I'm just an AI beta tool. I don't really know stuff. And that's like the last response that it'll give you, which is really funny when you get that, because at the beginning, it seems very confident that like, oh, just trust me, this is it. And then at the end, it's like, hey, what do you expect? I don't know anything. And you're like, so some of that's education and awareness, but I do think there's a way to kind of assess, like, is there enough input and credible input to put some faith in what this is? Or is this just an amalgamation of things that you found on the internet from 2 or 3 sources?
Yeah, that's good.
In respect to AI, or honestly any of the softwares you're implementing overall, like what are the best ways for companies to identify when they need to bring in new technology? And then like what's the best strategy so that that implementation goes over smoothly with anything else that they already have? Or if they don't have anything, how to get over that learning curve?
Yeah, so some of it starts with us, like if it's us, right? We're evaluating the tech they do have. So part of it's just like, what do you got? And if it's really antiquated, how important is it that you keep it? It's not uncommon to find, small businesses, local government, they've got antiquated systems, but they can't get rid of them. They're like, we have to build a bridge. We can't just get rid of it. So sometimes it's that, right? Are we building a bridge? Are we discarding old tech? Or is it enough tech, but they just don't have all of the necessary add-ons or improvements that might help with that? So tech assessment's a good place to start. What do you got, and how good is it, and how difficult or painful is it to switch from what you have? The other part that's pretty important too is goes back to the customer. So are your customers delighted or not with what you're doing? And if they're not, what are they trying to do that they can't do? So sometimes it could be as simple as and I talk to our customers all the time about this, and other folks too, is that we tend to be kind of put blinders on when we look at competitive threats. So I'm going to look at people who are in my business, or that are tangent to me, or that I might be at risk of losing my customer to. So I'm a lawn care business, and I'm looking at all the other lawn care guys. What are they doing, right? But the part that's tricky about that is most of those people's customers are not comparing them to their competition. Like I use lawn care service A. I don't really know what lawn care service B is up to, but I do know that Domino's Pizza can tell me as soon as Mark, the delivery guy, is about to pull into my driveway. And when my lawn care company doesn't tell me that, and then I see Mark, the lawn care guy, in my yard, and I'm wondering, why didn't I get notice of this, right? So as a customer, I'm applying a lens of, I know it's possible, but you didn't do it. And so now I want this from you, because it's clearly possible. And it's not so much that your competitors dangled some new feature to me, but I was exposed to something that's clearly technologically possible that you could choose to implement in and make my life better. And then I might say, but you didn't choose to do that. And it was only so long I'm going to let that go before now maybe I will see if some of the other guys are doing the service. So it's a really important piece of that when you try and think about like, which technology do I need? Certainly starting with the technology you have, but then also trying to be, are there any things that your customers are either asking or demanding from you that you're struggling to deliver? And if the only reason you're not doing it is because you haven't seen your immediate competitors do that, is to be aware of that they're asking for something that's very possible. And it's certainly something that you could implement. And it would make your customers' lives better, make them stickier, more valuable. And the longer you choose to put that off, the bigger the risk is that someone unlocks that and your customers flee, right? So that's what we're really trying to do, is try and make sure that we're making our customers aware of the technology that's available to delight their customers in a way that they're already used to, right? It's just as, how do I use this too? And that could be all kinds of different tech. But the reality is that as consumers, especially when we're using our phones all day, I know what all of my favorite apps are capable of doing. And if now I have a new service that doesn't implement some of that technology, I'm going to be immediately aware of it. I'm like, you're not using geolocation. You're not using this. You're not using that. You don't have a chatbot. I really like that. Whatever it is I have a lens to apply judgment to the services I use. And so I'm going to start expecting it. And then when it doesn't happen, the longer that doesn't happen, the more I feel like this company is just electing not to embrace the technology I need.
That's good. I feel like even as a consumer myself, I find myself thinking that, and you've just put into words that I've never been able to, that I realize that the pizza delivery guy's on the way. I know to expect it within 20 minutes. And I know that technology, exactly like you said, I know that technology exists, but I don't ever think about applying it to other existing businesses. And so that's a really interesting perspective for business owners to have about their own business. Like, what thought process do you already have, and how can that apply to your business? That's just a really interesting point.
Yeah, it's definitely one that gets kind of lost, I think. It's really easy to think of, like, you go build a competitive matrix and you look at everybody in your industry and here's what they do. And yet those same people are using their phone all day and they're like, oh, I know all this stuff's really possible, of being instead thinking like, how might this help our customers? it's just a really important step because it is easy to lose track of that. It's like, look at all these services that make incredible recommendations. Look at all these incredible services that can bring me something in one day. Like they can tell me when a service person's like where they are and when I'm going to be, interacting with them. So as we move through all of those pieces, anybody who's getting left behind on the technology side, that's just gets exposed bare to your customers because they're like, I know that this is possible for sure.
Yeah.
And yet you still don't do it. Yeah.
As you think about your kind of ideal customer base or profile, do you guys focus on large enterprise? Is it SMEs or is it some of all of it? And what size company is ideal for you to work with?
Yeah, ideal is somewhere in the middle. We work with people across the whole spectrum. So like from brand new bootstrap startups, like I got money on my credit card, I'm ready to go, all the way to like Sirius XM, right? So quite a wide spectrum. Our sweet spot is really established companies that don't really have technology as their core DNA, that are at some kind of a crossroads. And they're not exactly sure where to go, but they have the resources to invest in doing it, and they have enough upside to come out of that with the ROI that's needed for that. That's a good fit for us. Tend to be the really really big companies typically have a similar team that we would assign. That they might be busy and they might be looking for like, well, that group's occupied, so we need somebody over here. It's still tricky to plug in when that whole infrastructure is there and you're just kind of bolted onto that group. Right. And then the startups can be challenging again, just because they don't know when their next tranche of funding is coming. Right. We all know the startup challenges, right? And so I've got limited resources. I'm a single stakeholder.
Sure.
Like whatever it is, it's hard to get moving.
Customers with no money are not great customers.
And no resources.
And that's most startups.
Yeah. And maybe they're still trying to figure it out, right?
Sure.
Like some of us have done many startups and you know where all the landmines are. And some of it's like real bright eyed and like, all I have to do is come up with a good idea and it's going to be great, And so the middle is good for us. Those established companies that built their business in a lane that was not necessarily technology focused, but now technology is really important to them. Like a good example, that's a fleet rental company in Minnesota that has thousands of heavy equipment that they rent out, so forklifts and those kinds of things. And for decades, that business has been call me up when you need one of these things, have it go wherever you need it to go. We'll fill some stuff out on paper and bring it back when you're done, and we'll fill more paper out. Never really knowing where the equipment is, never know if it needs to be serviced, no idea how long it's been used or how much all these things, totally uncertain. Where then we go refit them with all these IoT devices. They now broadcast where they are. They broadcast when they get serviced. They're able to service the equipment only when it needs to be. They're able to go get equipment when it needs to be retrieved. And they know exactly how much it's been. Like their whole business changed. But they were in business for 40 years before they made that decision, right? So this wasn't like they woke up one day and be like, we're going to go disrupt the whole fleet rental world. But over time, realizing that we've let technology get so far, but we've gotten so far behind on the technology that we're just completely wasting resources and everything else with the way we're doing. And that's the kind of experience that's also rewarding for us, but it's really good because they're like, we're a very established company. We know what we're doing. We know our business. We do not necessarily know how to embrace technology to push our business as a step function up.
And so you're going across multiple verticals. You're not just zeroed in on one or two verticals. It's like anybody that's in that mid-size range could potentially be a good customer for you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're working in IoT, hospitality, telehealth, telemedicine, fintech. I mean, you name it. It's logistics and all kinds of things. And so it's really not so much for us. The industry vertical is not as important as either the technology we're going to use or the customer challenges that they're facing. And those customers could be internal or external. But the main thing is just the ingredients are there to know that like some technology, an advance in technology by kind of listening to our customers and our business needs is going to help kind of pivot them forward. And it's kind of industry agnostic in a lot of ways. Yeah. I mean, it helps that we have experience in some of those verticals, but it's not really necessary. Yeah.
I would imagine that, as you said earlier, that it's one problem to tackle, updating the old information. Is that completely abandoning the old systems? Is that building a bridge? That's one side of the problem. The other side of the problem is, like you said, people have all these different perspectives about AI and about new technology. Some people are very open to it. Some people are more timid. Both are right, I think, but you do have to overcome not only the technological side of whatever problem you're solving, but also the personal side of those decision makers in the company who have all of their own thoughts and opinions on the new technology. And so how do you bring that education to those people about what you're doing and really telling them that they need to update their systems?
Yeah, it's A lot of what we do early on is we'll do workshops with the stakeholders. And those workshops are really effective. It gets everybody in the same room, for one. It gets some of the difference of opinions out, and just like, no judgment. Let's just get all the assumptions that we have, and starting to look at who do you think your core customers are? Why do they think they hire you in the first place? What are you really good at? Where do you feel like your deficiencies are? And really just kind of getting all of that out. And so that could be extremely helpful for companies like this, because we come in as a completely, like a moderator or something, where we say we have no stake, we have no skin in this game yet.
Sure.
So we're going to help you guys figure what the truth is, and then get everybody's buy-in, and then we can all move forward together. And that's really kind of, in a lot of cases, it's one of the most effective things of bringing in a team like us, is you get a team of very seasoned people who've seen a lot of this stuff and heard a lot of these things over the years, but also that third party to kind of help everybody come to some kind of a common ground on what the direction is. Or at least if there are differences of opinion, that we can build a path to, like, how do we resolve this particular conflict? Like, we can go find the answer to this and help you guys. That's a tremendous first step, and it's absolutely worth it. Some companies are like, I don't know if we need that. You definitely do. It's one of those things, unless it's a single stakeholder who has a very clear vision of what they want to do, and there are no other voices in the room. It's important to do that, and it's great for the organization too, because we also produce assets that come out of that. So they have artifacts that they could share with people that aren't in that room. It helps get the rest of the company on board. We kind of have unified our vision and thinking about the future here, and so it helps get everybody just starts turning in the right direction right away. And that really helps, plan for a lot of that stuff. Because now when we need to make big decisions, we all understand what the priority is, and we all are aligned on why we're doing that.
Right. I think that's one thing that business owners often pass by, is the education aspect of why their business is important. And it's so important, because I know me as a person, as a human, that I want to know why I'm doing something before I will just do it. That was the same when I was a student. I want to know why I'm doing it this way. And so I think that people in business will often just say, like, well, no, you need my product or you need my service, but you don't ever educate why. And so I think the whole education side of why do I need your product or business in my life is so vital to business,
Yeah, I'm really, I can't say I'm surprised, because I've seen it a lot, but it is amazing how often you'll ask a board member or a CEO or some senior stakeholder in an organization, like, why do your customers even care that you exist? And they just like freeze sometimes. They're like, I don't really know. Like, we just think about, like, what do I have to do every day? Right. Or what are our operational goals? What are our internal KPIs? They have all these things that they're focused on. But when you start thinking about, like, why do you think any of your customers even care that you're here tomorrow? Like, why do they care? Or why would they hire you in the first place? That can be a really difficult question for a lot of people. And it's a good place to kind of come together on some of those things, because it makes those future decisions a little easier. But it is remarkable how many people are just heads down. I'm like, did I meet my internal metric for the day? And I actually have no idea why anybody's giving us money, right? Like, it's an interesting split sometimes. Yeah,
it's some miracle that happens in sales. We're not really sure why. Right?
Yeah, we solved that problem a long time ago. They just keep giving us money, so we'll just keep being efficient as possible. Yeah.
How long do you usually work with clients? Like, obviously it's an individualized approach, and so everything's going to be different. But on average, how long does this take kind of to go through the process of assessing all your technology, kind of identifying what needs to be implemented, and then going through that process of getting kind of rebooted? And then do you run into issues by the time you kind of get through that process? There's something new that needs to be, like, how do you keep up with the speed of technology?
Yeah, so a couple things there. It really, as you mentioned, it varies, right? The projects can really vary. What I would say is, like, a full custom software development effort is probably somewhere in the 6 to 12 weeks of, like, strategy and definition. And then it's not really, like a waterfall, right? We start ramping up development along that path as well. So if we're going to be doing the development work, as our strategy and definition is becoming, toward the finish line, we'll start ramping up our senior engineers and architects, and they'll start looking at the solution and getting ready. They'll start building the foundation for that so that they can start developing going forward. And that can, typically be, 4 to 8 months of development time. For a lot of our clients, we work with them kind of in perpetuity. So to your point, there's always something else, or almost always something else. There's a roadmap. And a lot of that first, 6 to 12 weeks is defining that roadmap as it is in that moment. But also, to your point, like, it's iterative, right? So there's going to be things that come out of nowhere that's like, oh, suddenly this product's more important. Or we have a whole new idea that we didn't even think about 6 months ago. And a lot of that's just, pause enough to assess the opportunity, reprioritize the roadmap or the features, and get back to work. And a lot of that's kind of being agile in the first place, right? Which is, we'll just keep building whatever the most important thing is and try not to thrash around too much. And so a lot of that's, again, bringing our experience to that, so that we try and, put up some defense around the thrashing as much as possible. Because, a lot of organizations, especially if you're not used to building custom software or just, product development in the first place, it can be easy to lose track of how disruptive thrashing can be. Mm-hmm. We're like, let's reprioritize this. Let's add this new feature. Let's take this feature out. No, wait, put that one back in. And this is, and the developers are just going back and forth and back and forth. And next thing you wonder, like, why did we miss the deadline? And why is it costing so much? And like all these other things. So it's kind of our duty as the professional, folks in this area to help our clients understand that piece as well. Like, how does this all work? And then how do we make sure we don't, put some guardrails in there so that we don't just steer off into oblivion somewhere and then somebody goes, wait, why are we way out here? And like, that seems like where you wanted to go, right? Like it's our job to keep them on the path. And so we work really hard at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's your favorite part as a strategy officer? I'm assuming you're very creative. You see the holes, you see the direction of where you need to go as a company, but also where your clients need to go. What is your favorite part of that whole process?
So my favorite thing, I don't know if I could say it's like a part of the process, but like one of my favorite things is to listen to someone speak for 15 or 30 minutes, as you're talking to them, and I hear the opportunity in what they're saying. Mm. And then you present it back to them and be like, well, have you guys considered, X? And they pause for a moment and they're like, yeah, we've been working on this for like 5 years and that never came up, or something like that. Like, that's really rewarding, right? Yeah. And a lot of that's just because we see so much, right? And I've been through a lot of the trenches on startups and in so many different industries that you get used to seeing opportunity in a lot of these challenges. But that's the best. Like, the best is when they all kind of like think like, yeah, that's a good one. We never thought of that. And then that ends up being the way forward. And so you build a lot of, there's a lot of equity in the relationship that comes out of those early conversations when you bring ideas out immediately. And we're like, okay, here's the things I'm hearing you guys say. This is the opportunity that might be in your roadmap that we should explore. And then they're all like, wow, that would be awesome if we could do that. And it had never come up before. Like, that's pretty nice.
I think that's way different than people that are not involved in the software development process. It's way different than what they imagine. I think they kind of imagine it's like the customer's got all the requirements and they hand them over and you kind of build the spec and it all goes smoothly. But there's a lot of value add because you're really doing a lot of discovery work to find out what is the real problem behind the problem and how should this work. And it's more of a trusted business partner relationship, trusted advisor you get into rather than supplier client type of thing. You know what I mean? It just seems like to be successful, you have to have a very close relationship.
Yeah, it absolutely is that. So to your point about how people think it works sometimes, right? A lot of times people think like, I'm going to come up with an idea. I'm going to write some notes down. I'm going to go hire a company in India to build it. And they're going to do a perfect job. And what you get back is your notes turned into a prototype. And you're like, what happened here? I thought you guys were building me this awesome thing. And they're like, you didn't tell us to build an awesome thing. You told me to build this
It's thing, a box of random parts that are not connected.
Yeah. And so, there are times for that. And, and as you mentioned, there's plenty of companies out there that are very technically proficient. They do custom software all day long. They're great at writing definitions and specs and all these things. And you can hand that to a group and be like, you may know nothing about this project. This is everything you're going to need to build this. Go. And it might work just fine. But it has to be defined so perfectly for a group to be able to do that. So a lot of times what we'll look at and say, to us, that's a dev shop. Like, we've heard the term dev shop. That's a dev shop relationship. A dev shop will build what you tell them to build. As an agency on our side, especially like as a product agency that we are, it's more about the consulting, the advising. We're bringing things to the table that are going to maybe change the direction of their business, maybe change their business model. Like, we're going to be advisors at a very high level and certainly a strategic partner to where they can come to us and say like, even things like fundraising or things like customer satisfaction or marketing or things where they're not necessarily hiring us for that, but they're coming to seek our opinions about like, what about this? And how do we deal with this? And like, what about this problem? And you become, there's been many times where I've sat in a room at a board meeting with one of our clients because their CEO was like, can you come in and like explain our roadmap to the board? I'm like, sure. Because we actually have a very horizontal view of their org and a lot of their people are still very vertically siloed. And so we actually become kind of, especially from the technology side, we've just become that part of their organization.
We're at the point where we typically land the plane. So, and this is one that the most famous answer to this question I'll tell you about after you answer. But if you had the ability to go back in time, you can imagine you have a time machine or you've got a wormhole in the backyard, whatever. And you could take all that accumulated knowledge that you've got today and go back to when you were just at the beginning. What advice would you give your younger self?
I think what I would say, what my younger self learned some things, over between now and then. And I think the thing that I eventually learned was, just take all challenges head on, right? Is never be the one who is like, that's not my job, or, maybe that's too hard, or I'm not putting in more than that person or whatever. Just go for it. Any task you can take on that anybody might need help with, do that thing. Identify wherever the challenges are and just dig right in and go for it. I ended up doing that. And, that was the path I was on. It took me probably longer to figure that out than if I had gone back through my wormhole and told myself that. Right. But that's still the thing, which is accept all challenges and just go for it. Being passive, being somehow feeling like you're better than whatever it might be, is just the surest way to end up in the middle someplace, or not be happy. So I think that's what I would do, is just be like, focus on that now. You're going to figure this out in like 6 or 7 years, but if you start now, it might move a little quicker.
No, that's great. That's great. And where can our audience find out more about Metova, more about you? What's the best way for them to learn more?
Yeah, Metova.com. So that's Metova.com. That has all of our stuff. We've got, some great blog content in there. I also write articles for Forbes. Those are all linked out through the Metova site. Things around digital disruption, customer satisfaction. There's some great stuff for people who are trying to figure out, like, where are we? What can we do next? What are the right steps? We try and put, a lot of that content out there for people who aren't our customers, but are stuck all the same, and offer some help.
It's great. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was awesome.
Welcome back to NWA.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. Ecosystem builders, entrepreneurs, chambers of commerce, mayors. If you're interested in taking your economic future into your own hands, we've got a book that can help you. Creating Startup Junkies, Building Sustainable Venture Ecosystems in Unexpected Places is the guide. It's a little bit inspiration. It's a little bit toolkit. What it will allow you to do is take your economic future into your own hands and build a sustainable small business, innovation, and entrepreneurial ecosystem in your backyard. If you'd like to hear more, check out creatingstartupjunkies.com. The Startup Junkie podcast reaches over 100 countries and has had over 100,000 downloads. If you're interested in reaching some of the most motivated and engaged innovators and entrepreneurs on a worldwide basis, give us a shout.